All right, so this video is about me. So I thought that I would just come on and tell you um, about me, my background, and why you should care. So I was an English major in college. I got really interested in writing in middle school and high school. And so I went to college to be an English major with an emphasis in creative writing. I was a fiction writer. So I did that for undergrad. I did take some education courses because I have been interested in education since I was a kid. I was one of those kids that liked school, um, and was always helping the teachers out. So I definitely liked education. So got my bachelor's and then went into a master's program because I wanted to write more and learn more about the craft of writing. So I kept writing fiction. I was a short story writer primarily. I did publish a short story in my master's program. My master's thesis was actually a novel. I still have it. I did edit it a bit um, after my program finished. I have not touched it in so many years, y'all. I do always have this intention of getting back to it. Maybe one of these days I will. So I graduated with my master's, and then life started lifing. So my mother had some health challenges towards the end of my master's program. I was out of state. I was at least like 10 hours away. So that was a little tough. I was really looking forward to graduating and moving back home and helping my mom out. So that's what I did. And I got a job um, doing some editing work with a financial planning company that they worked with a lot of nonprofits and charities. And I was one of the people who edited the newsletters that went out to their donors. So, like, for example, one of my accounts was National Geographic. So I worked with the plan giving officer at National Geographic to write a newsletter that would go out to their donors or potential donors, that would cover stuff like, wills and annuities and, how to make a gift to National Geographic. And I had several of these accounts. So I did that in 2007. And towards the end of 2007, we all know what was happening. And there were some whispers around the company of sales slowing down, things slowing down. And I ended up getting laid off from that job December 31st, 2007. And so I spent the first 4 months of 2008 trying to figure out what my next move was going to be. For anyone who knows, the 2008 economic crisis was um, kind of hard to get through, especially if you lost your job. Luckily, I was living at home, which was a real blessing because I had actually been making plans to move out before that. So, and I hadn't done it yet. Um, so I was basically at home watching the job numbers, feeling really discouraged, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, kind of started returning back to that education idea and that maybe I could try my hand at, teaching college. I didn't think I wanted to do the K through 12 system. And so I was like, yeah, I think you could teach college. Okay. So then you would need a PhD for that. So um, started looking into that, applied to my local university. My mom was kind of, starting to do a little better. She was on the mend. My younger brother was graduating from high school or getting ready to graduate from high school about that time. And so I was geographically limited to my area. So applied to the local school, got rejected. I actually applied to a couple of PhD programs before I graduated with my master's and got rejected. So that's the reason I got a job. And I went to talk to the English department at my local university to see what I could do to strengthen my application. And it turns out that um, they were being scrutinized, I guess is probably the best word for it, by the provost's office because they were not admitting enough students. They were being too strict on who they admitted. So, in talking to the director of graduate studies, they decided to reverse the decision and let me in. So that's how I got in my PhD program. Very quietly, just a conversation. Um, to pay for it, I got a job in the undergraduate admissions office at that university. So I was an undergraduate admissions counselor, so that was my full time job. And I did move out and got my own place and um, started my PhD program in the fall of 2008. My younger brother had just graduated from high school, so he was also attending that university. So he lived with me. My mother was still recuperating, so she lived with me as well. And so I had a full time job that I worked from 8 to 4:30, and then I took classes at night. So I completely understand if you have um, other obligations, other family obligations, other things, and other people you have to take care of. While you're also trying to do school, while you're also trying to work full time. And those days were enjoyable because I was reading a lot of the texts I wanted to read. I was studying the stuff I wanted to study, but they were very exhausting because there were a lot of things that I had to do to afford me the time to dedicate to my PhD. So it's like the other parts of my life made the PhD possible. Like I couldn't have done it if I wasn't working because I could not have paid for it. Needless to say, it took me 8 years to finish my PhD. So I totally understand if it takes you a long time. Everyone who started with me had graduated before I did. The department was very different my last year than it was my first year. Everyone I knew was gone. So that last year was a little isolating and lonely, but I was finishing my dissertation, so I really didn't interact with too many other people in the department. So I graduated in 2016. I I defended my dissertation on a Thursday. I took the Friday off to do edits. The edits were due that Friday. I had the weekend, and then I went back to work on Monday. Okay, so yeah, I get that experience too. I kept my job in admissions. Of course, I was job hunting. At the time, I had also picked up adjunct teaching in the department, so I had been doing that for probably about 4, almost going on 5 years by that point. So I had a full time job in admissions, and then I taught classes at night. I taught one class, and then I was applying for jobs. Right, so you can imagine how exhausting the academic job market is when you're just a full time student. And that was one thing that discouraged me from getting on the academic job market was that it was going to take so much just to apply. I was going to need a cover letter and a CV and your teaching statement and your research statement and your diversity statement and references. And I was just like, this is so much to do. And trying to get a hold of people to read those documents and give me feedback and edit them and get them where they should be so that I could apply was a lot, was like a whole nother job. And I had already had like 3 jobs, right? I was quite exhausted. So that was, one of the big deterrents for me. Um, the other thing was that I was getting interested in other fields. So while I was teaching, I ran across this field called instructional design. and started looking into it and was like, hey, I do a lot of these things. I think this is a job I could do. Now, there were some things I would have to learn, but it seemed like it was sort of this natural outflow from teaching. So I thought, well, why not? Let's try to go for that job. So I was, yeah, getting a resume together, which I kind of had one, but of course I hadn't worked on it in at least 8 years because I'd been building an academic CV. So I had to kind of dust it off and update it quite a bit. Um, and um, and I was ready to get out of school. I felt like, oh, man, I've been in school almost continuously, and I would love to just get out and be in the world, right? And so I did apply for some academic positions, the ones that didn't require a lot of documents. And then I was applying for some instructional design jobs and training jobs and stuff like that. Um, I ended up leaving admissions and I got a job in the graduate school at the same university. So I completely understand people who don't leave all at once. Some people don't just jump from academia straight to industry. Some people have an in between job or three, or, sometimes it just doesn't happen all at one time. I was the only person that I knew of in my program that did that. I I journaled a lot because I didn't have a whole lot of people to talk to. I didn't know of anyone else who was doing it. I didn't know who else I could trust with that information, right? So I wrote a lot about it and talked to a lot of people. My brother, my older brother, I have two brothers, is pretty well connected and pretty knowledgeable about the industry side of things. So about the time that I graduated, my younger brother graduated from college. And so, he was kind of preparing to launch and get his own place. By about my second year, my mother's health improved enough that she was able to, she was still going to work and stuff, but she was able to live more on her own. So then she wasn't staying with me. So some of those burdens kind of lifted a little. So that was nice. Um, so I ended up kind of looking for jobs on and off. I applied for things. Like I said, I had gotten a new job in the graduate school, and I was like, okay, so is this what I want to do, or am I still going for the instructional design thing? Should I look at something else? Should I? So I was in the graduate school for 3 years. Um, so the better part of that time, I was kind of still doing this research thing. My university had a certificate in instructional design that I decided to do because one, it was free, and two, it really helped me to accelerate my learning. So there were a lot of things that I knew just from reading online and reading people's LinkedIn posts and reading the blogs that they suggested and all that kind of stuff. But it would have taken me so much longer to learn a lot of the foundational things had I not done the certificate. And I also did it for some networking. I wanted to meet some other people in the field and maybe for some connections that way. So it was 4 classes. It was pretty easy. So I felt like it was kind of light lift considering I had just finished a PhD. I was not going to do a whole nother degree program. So I did that. And um, then looking at 2020, I thought, okay, you've been kind of in and out long enough. Let's make a decision. Are you going to do this ID thing or are you not? Are you really going to go for it or are you going to stay where it's comfortable? And 2020, I thought was my year. That was the year I was going to go for it, right? So I decided that I was going to kick up my job search in instructional design. That was the direction I was going to go in. And well, we all know what happened in 2020. So that lasted for about a month, right? Before the lockdowns. And then it was until maybe like the summer, like early spring, late spring, early summer, um, when things started to open back up again and people were kind of hiring. And during that time, most things were contract. Most people weren't hiring full time, right? Because they were too hesitant to do that. And all of the networking went online. So I was going to every coffee chat that I could, any networking conversation, any webinar, whatever I could make that was outside of working hours. Um, and so I didn't do like interviews and stuff like that during the day. I really tried not to do it. If I did it, it would be on my lunch break. So um, I was a part of a professional organization in training called ATD, which stands for the Association for Talent Development. And everyone in this group is either an instructional designer, a recruiter, some kind of corporate trainer, something like that, right? An e-learning developer, something like that. And one of the members came to me and she said, you should really do this Dare to Lead training, which is based on the work of Brene Brown, right? Who I had not heard of at that time. And so she's like, you got to do it. It's so great. You're really going to enjoy it. You could really benefit from it. Like, find a way to do this. And she just would not let it go, right? So I was like, all right, we'll do the training, right? So I did it. And I ended up meeting another participant. And I was introducing myself as someone who wanted to move from higher education to instructional design. And she mentioned that she had a friend that was looking for an instructional designer and could I send her my resume? So I was like, sure, you know. And you know how I get those requests all the time, and I didn't really expect much to come of it, right? So I can't remember when that training happened. I want to say it was like August or September. And it was October, and I got a call, and the contact wanted to talk to me about doing some instructional design work. So I was like, sure, okay, that was what I did, like many of you, just professional interviewer. That's what I did, right? And so we talked. She told me about the project, and I was telling her how great a fit it was for me, and all my skills and stuff. I was doing the academic thing, like, oh, I'm so experienced. I know all this stuff, right? And it was actually a contract with a local with not a local nonprofit. It was actually a nonprofit on the East Coast, and they were developing some training for college students who may have experienced their first real bout of racism, or at least their bout of racism that they can remember. And so this course was designed to kind of give them some of the vocabulary, kind of help them think through and process some of those feelings. So, kind of right up my alley, right? So I was like, yes, I would love to do this project. I was really interested in it. And so of course it ended just like all the other interviews ended. Oh, okay, this is great. I'll be in touch with next steps. Click, click, right? We're done. And then weeks went by, right? Weeks. And I thought, oh, they forgot or they hired someone else. And then, mysteriously, suddenly, the week before Christmas, which is pretty busy on a college campus because the our university was closed, the week of Christmas. So everyone's trying to get everything done, and I get this email from her, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to just be getting back in touch with you. I've been so busy. Here's the contract. We're going to start at the beginning of the year, and sign it and get back to me." And there it was. And just like that, I was an instructional designer. So, and many times that's how it happens. It's such a quiet thing, right? And so I signed that contract, and it was just me in my office, and I was like, okay, so I guess that's it now. So that was my first job. And um then I actually kept my higher ed job. I was still in the graduate school. I went back to work in January after the new year, and I did juggle both jobs. Now, at the beginning, it's not a whole lot. And I had never worked a contract job before, right? So I was like, I know this is kind of an industry thing. Um, I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know how lucrative it's going to be. I feel like I'm going to be back on the job market. So I'll just do this little, job just to, get the experience. It's my first real experience, but I didn't really feel like official, right? I felt like I'm still kind of transitioning a little bit. And it wasn't until February of 2021 um, that I actually left higher ed officially for good and decided to just do my freelance contract. And after that contract, I kept getting more and more and more, and I kept getting people contacting me, wanting me to do work. And of course, at that time, everyone was hiring contractors. They weren't hiring a lot of full time people. So that's where I'll stop for now. Um, I will do another video on my freelancing story because I feel like it deserves its own video, and this video has been long enough. So, questions, comments, where are you in this journey? I've been a freelancer for now going on 5 years. So I am more than happy to share my perspective and lessons learned and all those things if you want. So we'll talk soon.